Hello everybody, a big welcome back. I hope you found last sessions useful. I'd like to talk today about tonal values, okay? Tone. So we're now not leaving line behind, but we're talking about tone. And that's shadowing. That's basically creating light and shadow, understanding light and shadow. And so that's what we'll be doing today. I can even start actually while I'm talking to you, while we've got this talking shot, is I've got a white cup here, for instance, and I'll keep saying to you constantly how everything is dictated by its context. If I put a white cup, for instance, against a white piece of paper, I don't know if you can see that white piece of paper, it sort of slightly tends to disappear. But then if I put the same white cup against a black surface, a dark surface, you see that? Dark surface, it tends to kind of explode out it quite abundantly. So everything, that's like a very good first glimpse of tone. Okay, so if I was going to draw very simply squeeze this one here. 4 cylinders, very simply. So if the light was going to come from, for instance, the left, okay, you would find that your shadow would be on the right, okay? So I'm going to start shadowing this, I'm going to start shading this. So the light's coming from there, so I think the shadow, if it had a shadow on the ground, would be going like that. So notice that I actually left a tiny little gap on the right hand side. Sometimes there's a bit of reflected light. So most of the light is coming from the left. Imagine if the light was coming from the right, okay? Shadow going there. I'm slightly imagining it. Shadow's coming from the right. So your cylinder would be looking, let's just fill it in, would be looking a little bit more like that, okay? That's the shadow from the light's coming from the right, the shadow's coming from the left. Okay, this third one, if you can imagine that this cylinder is against the light, a bit like when you see someone on a beach, there's a figure standing in front of you on the beach, and the sunlight is streaming from behind them quite dramatically as you're straining your eyes. This would remarkably go very black, it would go very, very dark. The whole of the cylinder would be very, very dark, and the light would be probably creeping around the outside. And then finally, if basically that you've got a figure that's actually flooded with light, you've got the light coming straight at them, then you're looking at basically your figure's going to be very, very bright and sort of a bit like Rembrandt, a bit like Rembrandt, a bit like the chiaroscuro artist. You've got your cylinder or your figure sort of exploding out of a kind of dark context, and there may be just a little bit of light, a little bit of nuance coming into it. I think actually the one that I did earlier was slightly better. You can see this is against the light, this is the light coming towards it, you've got the light coming from the right, you've got the light coming from the left. So when you're starting to draw the figure, you need to evaluate where the light is coming from. Just make a snap decision. Okay, the right's coming from the left, the shadow's coming from the right. Take a snapshot photograph in your mind, memorize it, put it in your toolbox in your head, and get on with the drawing and keep thinking of that and bearing that in mind as you go. Another thing with tone that I've just drawn this, I won't draw it again, I don't think I need to, is I call it stepping, where it's not always that simple where you have the light coming from one side, the shadow coming from the other side. You can get this kind of what I call a change of plane. You can see in these steps you've got a dark shadow a light shadow, a dark shadow, a light shadow, a dark shadow, a light shadow. So I'm asking myself, where would the light be coming from? I think the light would be coming from here in that instance, because this is where the light is, this is where the shadow is. So, that's something to be aware of, that the figure is not a cylinder, it's not a square, but a perfect example where you see stepping, as if you were going to do someone's foot close up. I've just drawn a sort of cartoon image of a foot, where you've got sort of, this is in shadow, this is like a top light actually, this is in shadow, this part of the toes is in light, this part of the toes is in shadow, this part of the toes is in light. So you've got this sort of shadow, light, shadow, light, shadow, light. So you've got this rhythm of the light coming across it, this what I call stepping. Okay. Likewise, actually, if you remember my tree drawing from the first lesson, I could even sort of elaborate on that. I could even sort of, let's add another branch to it, actually. Let's add another branch. So you've got basically the light coming from the left, the shadow coming from the right. You could then start sort of developing the same drawing into, the lines doing it for you as well. But you could actually start creating that feeling of the I don't know if you can feel that. Actually, I wish I hadn't done that branch. So where would the light be? So this would be a little bit darker. I'm sounding very prescriptive and logic. I would generally say to you, it's really, really important to actually draw what you see. You don't want to say to yourself, oh, the light's coming from there, therefore I should be doing that. It's basically bearing in mind where the light source is, using it to provoke your vision, and then applying it to your drawing. Okay, applying it to your drawing. Where's the light source? Okay, generally we've got this light coming from the left, shadow coming from the right. Keep bearing it in mind throughout the drawing. Okay, what I'd like you to do now, this exercise, is I basically want to, I call it inking up. It's a bit like etching, it's a bit like printmaking. So I want you to grab a piece of paper. It can just be a piece of ordinary computer paper if you want. Whatever you've got. I've got a nice piece of paper here. And what I'm going to, basically when you're doing tone, it's quite nice actually. It's something very comfortable when you begin tonal drawing to work from dark to light, from a half-toned surface. So I've just inked up this piece of paper. It's not ink, it's charcoal. I've just covered the piece of paper, not too dark, not too light, not too tame. Something my teachers used to say is quite nice to do is to sort of put a frame around it, and that gives you an idea of the format of the image. Then what I'd like you to, I haven't done the model only exercise actually in this lesson. I'm very conscious of that. I might just do it at the end because I really want you to do it every lesson. But this one, I don't know, am I doing the model? I don't think I'm doing the model only with this one first. I'm just going to go straight into a pin man. Remember the pin man? So where's the head? So basically the image I'm working from again, I'll just grab this. The image I'm working from, the photograph looks a bit like that. So the head is there, the shoulders are there, the hips are there. Back to this one. Sorry, I'm using the same one all the time because it's a little bit clearer, but you can use any photograph that you like, anything that you like. So pin man, hips are going here, arm is coming down here, arm is coming out there, arm is coming out there. So I don't know if you can feel, in fact I've got a black and white version here, it's probably a bit easier. This is where I'm going to just have practice one, that's where I'm heading, okay? So you can see the difference between the two. So I've got my basic pin man. And then I'm going to do, just as I taught you in the previous lesson, a line drawing, okay? It's a basic, simple, my body's in the way, sorry, basic, simple line drawing. The starting point, remember the starting point? So I'm going back into the starting point, a line drawing. Always tend to do this arm a little bit too big, but that's how I'm seeing it. Just follow the reality. again, with your pin man, don't get trapped by your pin man. Your pin man's only a guide, okay? Okay, so there's my first arm, and then I'm going to wander down. So this, relating to this is the starting point. Where's the next bit? Looking at the starting point, placing it first, and then I've got this line coming down. I'm looking at the model only coming down. I've now realised actually that my head could be further over, so that I'm not being dictated by the pin man. It just gave me a rough kind of guide. Now I'm coming across the model, looking again at the starting point. I don't know if that obscures me by putting my finger there, but if you put your finger there on the starting point, and when I'm moving across, is that left shoulder relating to the starting point position-wise? Yes, I think so. Go ahead then, Caroline. I'm just talking to myself. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead with this. That's the negative shape of space. We'll be talking about that in another lesson. And then, now I'm looking at the spine, which should in theory be down the centre, but this drawing, this photograph always astonishes me. The spine just seems to be very much to the left, so I'm just telling it how it is. And then looking again at the starting point, where is the bottom? Okay, where is it to the hip? Placing it first. You know what? It's such an effective way of doing things, just relating things to the starting point. It saves all manner of kind of corrections and getting lost and rubbing out. Now I'm doing this, looking at the starting point. Where is this relationship to the starting point? There. So starting point bottom, starting point hip, starting point side. Okay, and once I know where it is, I feel I can just really enjoy the drawing. It's just so easy. It's so much easier. And then I've got the other hand. Now I know it looks a little bit dull now. It looks a little bit dull, this sort of light linear drawing on the grey. So what I would like you to do now is to carve out. So you think, oh God, why is she doing line again? I want to do tone. So this is where the tone comes in. So the light in this picture, again, I'll bring this one here. The light is coming from the left. There's a little bit of stepping, a bit like the foot. Light, shadow, but the light is coming from the left. Okay, so that's where I'm going. So now I'm getting the rubber. I'm using the rubber. This is quite a nice piece of paper actually. Using the rubber, without going necessarily right up to the line, we'll be talking about that in the next lesson. I'm now just kind of drawing the light as I see it. Don't make anything up. And then there's a lovely bit on the shoulder blade here. So actually, as you're watching this film, you could actually print out this picture so that you know exactly what I'm working from. Just I don't want to show it for copyright reasons. It's a bit tricky, isn't it? So I've got the light coming from there. Now, I've been actually talking about the dark, basically a mid-tone to a light. So now I'm going into a sort of darker tone. So I've got three things going on now. I've got bright light. I'm working from a mid-tone. It's just very friendly, actually, to work from a mid-tone. There's a lovely bit of shadow coming here. There's a lovely bit of shadow coming there. This is the head that's actually quite dark. It's a tiny, lovely kind of thread of light coming just there. And then I've got the hand. And hands, again, please just look at the model only and get the mitten shape, okay? I think for the first bit, for the first drawings is just get the exterior shape of the hands. They're much bigger hands and much lower than you think, okay? Hands are much bigger, much lower than you think. Far more ape-like than you'd ever imagine. And then it gets a bit dark. It's a lovely chunk of dark here. A lovely kind of shape you know, sometimes I really love to sort of find the shape of shadows. There's a lovely kind of shape of shadow coming there. This is actually, I'll stop in a minute, this is actually quite dark, this is quite dark. The sort of darkness coming from here, darkness coming from here, and then there's a lovely little chink of light on the shoulder, and the spine. This is it with the spine, with this drawing. This is it with the spine. There's a lovely kind of feeling of you know, wait, this is what I mean by using the rubber as a creative instrument. So I'm actually drawing lines with this rubber. You can actually draw with the rubber. It's not a negative thing. It's a really actually, I'm seeing shadow there. Whoops. Of course, it would be, wouldn't it? I'm seeing shadow coming up this arm. This is shadow. So the light's coming from there. The light's coming from there. And actually, just let's draw with this rubber a bit. I really love the putty rubber actually, because you can get this. You can actually get this lovely kind of sense of mark making coming with it. And then. And you know, don't be afraid. The beautiful thing about charcoal is you can sort of mould it around. What I quite like is now that, you know, these whites are actually sort of coming through. I've got a little dimple here, a little dimple there. So there, you can. I think that's enough to sort of tell you the story. Yeah, that's the one that I did earlier, a bit like cooking programming, isn't it? So that's the one that I did earlier. So there you have your working from a mid-tone to a light, okay? So I've said actually before how everything is dictated by its context. The same idea as the cup against a white piece of paper, against a black piece of paper, it looks very different. So I've got some paper cutouts here. Sorry, some of you who've been with me before have had this before. So I've got these paper cutouts just for fun. Won't take a second. Basically, I was explaining those scenarios with the cylinders. These are a little bit simplistic, but you might not have noticed actually this woman. I've just sort of made a silhouette of a woman. This woman is basically. Sorry, it's a little bit sort of clumpy here. Is basically a black silhouette. Okay, can you see that? It might pop out. Sorry if it does. Can you see she's a black silhouette against a white? That's the woman on the beach, isn't it? You feel you're in the Mediterranean country. She's on the beach, so she's very much against the light. That she's against the sunlight. If you turned yourself 360 degrees and look the other way, it would look different, but she is against the light, so she's very, very dark. You can't make out her features. That's quite extreme, so I'm going very extreme. Then you might not have noticed this. Simply, you didn't notice it because its context was white on white. Okay, so we have this lady, who I'll stick on here. Hopefully she's going to stick. They don't tend to stay very easily, so I don't know if you can see that if I hold it down. So this woman is what that to me is more of a night class. So if you were doing an evening class, and you've got this electric light, that's kind of what you're seeing. She's very illuminated. If you think of Caravaggio's paintings, even Rembrandt's paintings, that's very much that kind of thing where she is exploding in a very sort of dramatic way out of a dark. Out of the darkness. I mean, there's obviously the stepping involved, which I was showing you with the foot, but she's exploding out of that dark context. And then, most likely of all, when you're in the room, when you're back in the real world and back in the room, you've got this kind of scenario in a sort of daytime morning light, where the model is kind of slightly mid-tone. She's not as black as that, but she's sort of got this mid-tone. So what am I saying with tone? What am I saying? Tonal values, what am I saying with this? Basically the studio is quite dark, and then she might be against the windows. So 1, 2, 3. So what am I saying in this tone? Basically, when you look at the model, when you start the drawing, ask yourself what's happening with the tone. Where's the light coming from? It's coming from the left, is it coming from the right, is it coming from the top, is it coming from the bottom? If it was top light, sorry I haven't really explained that, if it's top light, you'd have more light on the top of the form and more shadow on the bottom of the form. And it's obviously way more nuanced than that. It's way more complex, but you just keep that in the top of your head. It's like a computer program. You just feed that information in and bear it in mind. You know, if it helps, you can write it in pencil on the top corner of your picture, and that keeps you on track. And I'm not saying should. I hate the word should. The light should be doing this, there you have to do it. I'm asking you basically to bear that in mind and use that to awaken your awareness of what you're looking at. Okay, don't be logical about it, because it's always illogical what you're actually drawing. It never kind of obeys the rules, that's what's so exciting about it. But just bear that in mind. So the next exercise, the last one we just inked it up. We just inked up. I'll take it back. I started with inking up, or just putting a load of charcoal base and then working from line to the shadow and then carving it out with a rubber. Now, a bit like Seurat, well, not really quite like Seurat, a bit like Seurat in the sense that I want you to sort of almost evaluate this drawing purely tonally, especially first. So I think, again, you could actually, as a beginner, you might want to, she's just contradicting herself now, I'm doing a few lines, but again, you might want to sort of do that basic pin man again. Just to sort of, you can look at the model as you do it. Don't spend long. Okay, there's your pin man. There's your pin man. You know what's happening now. That might hold your hand as you go. So now I want you to do this drawing. See if you can do it. I know this is probably a bit alien to you, but I want you to do this drawing absolutely kind of lineless, completely lineless for a bit. Just a nicer piece of charcoal. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just sort of feeling the energies of the pose, completely lineless. It's very spiritual this way. I love it. This is a very free, spiritual way of doing it. So you can sort of feel the energies of the pose. I was looking at the drifts of the pose, the flows of the pose, the body rhythm of the pose. 1, 2, 3. So I was feeling that as well. But I'm also looking at the directionality of the light and the dark. You notice I only did that for a few seconds, okay? So now I want you to come in, with the line, with the light. So we're so used to starting the drawing with the line and then going in with a tone. But this one, you might find this quite challenging, but just don't worry. It's not going to bite you if it goes wrong. It doesn't matter. So just quite not challenging, but if you do it, you'll love it. You can just trust me on it. You'll love it. But it's just a bit alien to you because we're so programmed to do by our school teachers to do the line and then colour it in. So this one, it's sort of now I've started with the tone. And now I'm going into the line. I'm bearing in mind that the light is coming from there. So in fact, I want to go back into the tone now. You can, that's fine. No law against that. I'm going to go back into the tone. And the next lesson I'll be talking about actually getting your line to interweave in and out of your tone. And I quite like that kind of freedom. And then looking again, where do you feeling it when you're working from photographs? Oh God, you've got to kind of really imagine it there. You've got to really feel it. I'm just trying to get the spine and then the bottom. So again, the starting point. Sorry, I didn't talk you through that, but I started with the starting point. And everything that I'm doing, I'm looking. Everything, my eye, sorry, I wasn't explaining that. My eye is always going back to this area. Is this correct with this area? Is this correct with this area? Is this correct with this area? So starting point, and then actually this arm, why don't we just start it with the tone? So feeling my way around, this is really feeling my way around the whole of this drawing. And then where is the crack in the bottom? Follow the line of the spine down, look at the starting point. It looks like I'm not doing anything, but I am, I'm just finding where it is. And then once I've got it, I can draw it with such definitive passion and energy. I can really feel that's quite an important bit, getting the bottom in the right place. It's annoying if you haven't related it properly. If you haven't related it properly, and then you have to do it all over again. So it's just sort of, that really helps actually. If you do learn to relate things properly, then you will be fine. And then the arm coming here. And I love this kind of elbow that's kind of half in and half out. There's a lovely shape, talking about shapes of shadow, there's a lovely shape of shadow here. And then the line is sort of sitting in the middle of it really nicely. Little nuance here, little nuance there. Oh yes, we can't lose that shoulder. The shoulder blade, the shoulder bone coming out here. So it's very, a bit of stepping here, because the body is coming round and then out into the light, just like the foot. I've lost my foot. Where is it? Never mind. Just like the foot, that sort of changes of plane as this, as these two, as the bottom plummets into a valley of shadow. Don't want to do it again because I like my line, but let's just do it for the education of it. So it plummets into the line of shadow, and then you've got that gorgeous line coming out, and then we've got this. Oh yeah, this actually is lovely. This is where I've got my putty rubber. I love putty rubbers. You can really draw with them. And this lovely line coming across. Am I there? Sorry, I don't want to be indulgent. Just as I begin to enjoy it. I think I'm home and dry. And then you've got this lovely bit of negative shape of space. I didn't want to say it, but come on, Caroline, you can see it. Tell the truth. Draw it. Negative shape of space. And this arm actually is all in a sort of valley of shadow. This is all in shadow. God, of course, I wish I'd done that to start off with. Lovely shadow, shape of shadow here, and then 1, 2. This is ridiculously dark. Okay, I'm enjoying it way too much. Okay, and then hand. It seems a pity not to have done a hand. Always like to do the hand. Can't not do a hand. Okay, just the gist of it. So there you have it. I don't know if it was too upside down. The light was coming from there. Actually, let's do the spine, because that illustrates the stepping. There's a lovely kind of feeling of the spine. So you've got the light, shadow, light, shadow. You've got the stepping going on. Light, shadow, light, very light, shadow. So the light is coming from there, the shadow is coming from there. I've illustrated the stepping, so that's that one. So the difference between the two of them, I know it might be quite confused, it seems like the same thing. This one actually is better on a white piece of paper. You ink it out, you just cover it with charcoal, do the line drawing, and then work out where the shadows are. This one's completely different. This one you are starting not with a line, you're starting with this gestural area of shadow, and then you're bringing in the line. So there we have those two drawings, one from basically inked up surface, and one just from what I call rivers of tone to line. It's like a river of tone and the energy of it to the line, which was the second one. So you can see, just going through what I was saying conclusively, was that the tree, you can see the light coming from the left, and then these three these three cones, these three cylinders and the tonal values, and then the stepping that's going on with the foot, this sort of change of plane with the light. So I've got an image by Rembrandt here, where you can see clearly the lights coming from one side. You've got a bit of stepping as well. So that's something I love about Rembrandt actually. When you look at his portraits, many of them, is you can get this kind of just if you look on that side of his face, there's a tiny bit of light where it's kind of bounced from the other side of the wall. So generally, anyway, I hope that doesn't confuse you. Basically, you've got the light in a big way coming from one side and the shadow in a big way coming from the other side. So that's Rembrandt. And here's another one, another picture as well, where you clearly see the light coming from one side and the shadow coming from the other. So it seemed to be very much a favourite position of his portraits. So I'm sorry this one is so small. This one basically is a whole full figure actually, which I couldn't resist, where you can so clearly see the light coming from one side, the shadow coming from the other side, and a bit of stepping. That's a sort of supremely clear one. Okay, this one's a very good example of top light, Cathay Kollwitz. You can just see on the cover of this book, you can see the light coming from the top of the image and just gently flowing down into a half tone. And I think that's lovely as a sort of focal point, that little ribbon of light coming from the top. It gives us a lovely feeling of atmosphere as well. The rest of her is a half tone exploding out of a dark, almost chiaroscuro. So that's another scenario. Okay, this is George Seurat. So I think why I'm showing you this is because he was one of these very unusual artists when he drew. He sometimes did these drawings that were almost completely lineless. There's no lines at all. And I find that really interesting. And also the paper, if you can see the paper here behind, it's actually just the paper. The white is actually the paper. Okay, this one, again, George Seurat. You can see, again, a lovely feeling of texture, no lines at all. I'm not saying this is how you should do it. When you leave this course, you can do whichever way you want, but I want you to just explore these ideas. So this is, anyway, George Seurat, completely lineless, very difficult to do. Not necessarily saying you could do it, but this is just to prove to you that you can actually do things almost completely, or completely with tone in his sense. So, last of all, sorry, I know I kind of wanted to do this at the beginning. The reason I didn't do this at the beginning because it's irrelevant. It's more relevant to line. But I want you to do this exercise every single lesson, because it's going to really kickstart your observational skills. Can you remember last time when we looked at the model only? Okay, so you put your screen up, put your photograph up, and then there's no starting points or anything. So what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to repeat, I'm not going to look at the paper at all. I'm just going to look at the screen, and I'm going to lock the tip of my charcoal onto the line of the model, as if she's under a piece of tracing paper. As if you were tracing the lines of the car outside with your finger, as if it's like tracing, if that can give you the perspective of it. Okay, so I'm now going to start the drawing. It's not important, you don't have to show me this if you don't want to. I just want you to make sure you do it. So I'm looking at the drawing now, to make sure that I don't look at I just want you to see that I'm not looking at the paper. I'll lower my screen. Okay, I don't want to look at the paper. So I'm just looking at the model. So here we go, the shoulder. So the contour of the shoulder and down through the arm. So I'm not looking at so I can almost see the drawing, I don't want to see it. So I'm not looking at the drawing at all. The arm, the side of her. Okay, and back up. And don't worry, don't let your charcoal leave the surface, because it's so much easier to vaguely relate. You can sort of vaguely feel, you're sort of like a blind person, you're feeling your way through. So I have no idea whether I've got the bottom coming out of the shoulder, you just don't know. Trying to do it with as much intent. And actually, if you do the lines really super slowly, why are you going so slowly is because you're getting every kind of nuance in the line. I'd like to get the head in, but I have no idea where it is. I'm not looking. So you notice I've looked at the screen every split second. I still haven't looked at the drawing. Okay, I'm going to go up to the hand. Like this side of the arm. Hand. No, I can't feel the other. Okay. So am I going to allow myself to look? Okay, I'm going to allow myself to look now. Let's see. It's a bit like a game. It's like consequences. Yeah, there you go. That's perfect because you can see, I don't know if you can see the drawing now. It's pretty rubbish, isn't it? But it doesn't matter. It's like that's what I want. It's just an exercise. So I've locked the charcoal on the lines. The head's far too over to the right. I'm not sure the width of her, the bottom, this side of her's too wide, this side of her's too thin. That's exactly proves that I haven't looked, okay? So, so basically if you can do a drawing, just cover the sheet of paper with charcoal, a line drawing and trace out the light with the rubber and start pushing in some dark so you've got a tonality. I was going to do a kind of tonal range, yes, actually this one, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? If that helps you evaluate tone, you can actually do a strip of paper doing the darkest tone and then a paler tone and a paler tone, and then put that next to you when you draw. I didn't demonstrate that, I'm sorry, I don't think I need to. I think you could figure that out if you want to. Then I'd like you to do another drawing, just the tone first, lovely kind of gestural river of tone. Pinman, sorry, remember the pinmen always first. And then the river of tone, and then the line, and then just do a few more drawings. You could do one with your left hand. I really want you to do a model only one, as many as you can within the time. As long as you can do those key two, that would be great, sort of bearing in mind the directionality of the light that the picture provides. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you have fun.